Welcome back to Heart with me, Shakti Sundari. We're here at the Bali Spirit Festival and I'm just about to speak with Shashi Solluna, international tantrika, goddess of the temple arts, author, presenter and so much more. Welcome.
Thank you. Now of course I know you, but a lot of people watching this might not, so for their benefit, who are you and what do you do? Well, yeah, I'm Shashi, and my life has been really dedicated to the path of Tantra for the last 15 years, and what I do is share it. But I do more than sharing. I teach and I write, and I created online portals as well. But I'm also really passionate about living tantrically and creating communities and bringing Tantra into everyday life.
So how did you get into Tantra? So you've been teaching for 15 years or living this path for 15 years.
Yeah.
What got you into it?
Being sort of opposite, really, because I was a celibate Buddhist.
Were you?
Yeah, I was.
I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
I was at Oxford studying psychology, and I was studying the effect of Buddhist chanting on the brain, and I was going down this path, and I was so much a seeker of truth. So when my degree was finished, I went off to India to sit with enlightened masters and seek truth, and so I totally wasn't interested in relationships, in intimacy. The age of 20, it was all behind me. I was just focused on truth and going to satsangs and things like this. And after a couple of years, I really had a big awakening with one master. And at the same time, I was awakening with a man. He was next to me, and we fell in love in this moment. And
Can I just ask you something there? Just when you say I had an awakening, what does that mean?
Well, it was a recognition, like the teacher was trying to point us to who we really are. So we were looking beyond our mask and our identity and who we think we are, and we were asking the question, who am I, who am I? And it was a lot of what's called investigation and inquiry. And the awakening is one of like, aha, it's like a moment of, I'm that, I'm not this, I'm that. And so I had this glorious moment that is like, yes, I'm that unnameable thing, but just recognizing. And I recognized at the same time as a man who was on the course, and we turned to each other and we recognized that in each other. And so there was a falling in love and a falling in truth at the same moment. And he'd been practicing Tantra, and so suddenly I was thrown back into a relationship again. I married him. I stayed with him for 9 years. And together we explored Tantra. And our question really was, well, this amazing truth that we recognize when we're meditating or sitting with a guru, how do we bring this amazing truth into everyday life? Because we're sitting there going, oh, I'm this, and then arguing over the washing up.
Exactly.
So we really had an important quest, is how do we stop arguing about little things? How do we bring the higher truth into everyday living? And Tantra seemed to have the answers.
So how did you find that answer?
Well, I like to look at my life as a quest, that I'm constantly asking big questions and then letting life teach me. But the answer was really through Tantra. I mean, in particular, one thing in Tantra that's called transfiguration, meaning to see the divine in another. And it's not about turning a blind eye to someone's faults, but when someone is acting out of fear or anger, to set an intention to see the truth, the love, who they really are behind the behavior that's coming out. And so it's a difference from if somebody's getting angry and you go, oh, you're an angry person, and you identify the whole of them as that anger. Oh, look how angry you are, and I'm leaving you. But instead, you allow the anger to arise and breathe it in and feel it, and another piece of you is dedicated to seeing the truth behind it. So this, I think both pieces are needed, because the Enlightenment world goes, oh, well, you are that, you are God. But there is the other side, which is emotions need to move because they're energy and they're trying to bring us back home. There's something not quite right that we feel when there's tension or anger or upset, and yet we don't need to suppress it and push it away, but we need to learn how to move it so that it returns to love. And that's what Tantra does so brilliantly.
So how do we do that if we begin to react rather than being able to stay in that neutral divine space ourselves?
It's not necessarily about staying in a neutral divine space. It's about moving energy, and actually orgasm is one of the best ways. Orgasm is an amazing alchemist that transforms what's contracted into expansion again. And when you look at anger or fear or, things that create problems for us, we can see there's always a contraction, which creates a feeling of separation and instead of love. So if we're in contraction and we let energy move through, it could be orgasm, or it could just be allowing orgasmic waves, allowing ourselves to feel what's happening in that moment, then we will return to expansion again. And even if one person's willing to do that, the other one is most likely to, because we resonate with one another, to come too. So being able to move energy, of course you may not feel like making love if you're in the middle of an argument, but if you're practicing making love the rest of the time, then you're more likely to have this inner alchemy working, that you can breathe through it and feel it all and let it do its thing through us so that we can return to love. So it's a healing process as well.
And so now you're on this tantric path, and you've mentioned the word tantra a lot, and of course it has many different meanings and interpretations. So how would you define tantra?
I see tantra as being really bringing opposites into a transcendence, into a union and a transcendence. So some people think, it's about balancing opposites. Balancing isn't enough, it's one step. It's actually meeting and transcending. So that can of course be a man and a woman, it can be two people, but it's also within us. So it's like if I think of myself as being an introvert and then I judge extroverts, and I'm cutting myself off from the totality of my experience here. And if I can find, I can either really bow down to those who are extroverts, and then it'll start to awaken within me, and find the totality within me. Often we fall in love with people who have a quality we don't have. And so there's this amazing opportunity over and over again to bow down to that we think is not us in the other. And by loving it, we fall back into the totality and the transcendence. So there's a liberation, a freedom from duality, to use big words, a freedom from being stuck in one half of things, so being stuck as always the introvert or always the extrovert or always this or always that actually we are total. There is a totality there, and we feel free when we feel able to play in the totality. So Tantra is a path that allows for that alchemy, and we can do that alchemy alone. But of course, life is constantly going to bring us into relationships with perfect mirrors that we can do this work with.
So you've given the wonderful definition, but in practice then, what is it? Is it, because you talk about it as a lifestyle. So again, I think maybe some people might imagine Tantra as just doing sexual practice, for example. So what is it? What does one do? What does one be when one's living tantrically?
There are different pathways with different practices in, and different strands within that. So practice is one part of Tantra. It's particularly seen in classical Tantra or Taoist Tantra, and they'll do practices with yoga, breathing, moving energy, Qigong, different practices that are breaking our habitual patterns. So our body is holding a whole programming in. So if we move our body into different shapes and move and breathe in a different way, we automatically can break out of those limiting patterns. So practice is one thing, and then there's experiential Tantra. So that's going to workshops. You can't really do that one at home. And workshops create like a little playground where you can play things out safely. So, that can even be like trauma release work. So, if you had a trauma, you're afraid of angry men or something, then the workshop could be set up, and there could be a man or a woman who stands in, and a whole thing being played out where you get to move through it in a different way than you would have done in real life. So experiential Tantra gives you a lived experience, sometimes releasing trauma, sometimes opening to pleasure, opening to ecstasy. So you get a little playground to feel safer to try life out in a different way than you would at home. And then by trying it out in that playground of the workshop, when you go home, of course, it integrates and you're able to live your life in a different way. So that's experiential Tantra. Then there are also rituals, and rituals are a different type of contained space which raise energy and give us a powerful shift. So rituals can give us a very profound experience that we wouldn't necessarily have the capacity to hold in our everyday life, but the ritual holds so we can have a higher experience. So many people in a tantric ritual, and they can look like anything. There's a lot of eye gazing and then bowing down and meeting someone as the divine. And we don't normally do that. We go, hi, how are you? And we talk about our problems. But in a ritual, we bow and say, I bow to you, goddess, I bow to you, God, and I put flower petals on you. We do things we don't ordinarily do. And by practicing seeing the divine in each other, then that also integrates. So there are many different expressions of Tantra. It is possible to do Tantra as a single person as well. And some people, if they've had sexual trauma or difficulty relating, they choose to go into a relationship with themselves a little deeper first. And other people really enjoy to go through relationship. So there's no one way in Tantra. There's definitely a lot of focus around energy, and something I notice in the Tantra world is the Kundalini, or this life force energy that's so potent, really does get awakened through the practices and in the field of people who come together. So there's a feeling of embodied awakening. It's not that people are just in their head trying to work out what truth is, but really wanting to feel it in the body. With energy, with aliveness, with radiance, with love, with tangible feelings.
So if someone watching this, they were sitting at home, leading their ordinary life, having a 9-to-5 job, and they're listening to you talking and they're thinking, why should I do this? Why would I do this?
I would say the main thing is if you want to feel more alive, that's it. I mean, you don't have to. It's totally unnecessary to do Tantra. It's a luxury. But I think probably the thing that draws people the most, and the thing that Tantra can address the most, is just purely wanting to feel more alive. So I meet a lot of people who feel like they entered a job or a relationship or a lifestyle that just started to dull them down. Yeah. And it's like, oh, I lost myself, or I died, or it's become a dull existence. And maybe they see something or get a taste of something or read something that just, it's like a remembrance, and it's a remembrance of how we were as children. I mean, really, we're returning to our innocent aliveness, but as adults. And so sometimes there's this remembrance, or people meet people they're inspired by, and they feel alive, and they want that aliveness also. They realize they've maybe become stiff or shut down or contracted. I think one simple way is to always look at how much contraction we have in our bodies, in our lives, in our minds, and how there is a yearning for expansion. Just as the trees want to expand up to the sun in the forest, we have that inside of us, a yearning to expand in this lifetime. And Tantra addresses that yearning and gives us methods to do it, and to handle the fear we have around that, and to make it safe for us to expand.
And you've been practicing for 15 years, you've been teaching, writing, presenting. What are the gifts that Tantra has given you?
I mean, it's so much. It's my whole life. I can't just kind of list a few positive qualities. But exactly that, feeling very alive. I feel I got my life. I feel like, wow, I've really done it. I've really sucked the juice out of my life. I feel like I'm living it. In fact, just walking here to meet you now, I was walking along thinking, we are doing it, we're living it. My heart was really expanding with this feeling of joy that we're not waiting for something, and we're not doing our practices for some time in the future. We're just cracking ourselves open more and more now, so we can meet each other deeper, so we can recognize the love in each other and celebrate in that, sing and dance together. And that's it, really, a total feeling of living life and living it with love, with joy, with all range of emotions. But most especially, even through going through challenges, because Tantra encourages opening even through pain. Yeah. Even challenges open you up, and that's amazing. So I think another more subtle quality that Tantra brings is a feeling that there's nothing to be afraid of, because even if things come that are hurtful or harmful, or even a trauma comes, there's a way to let that trauma in and through and grow from it and expand from it, and it brings you more alive. So I think this is one of the most incredible qualities that Tantra gives us, is to not have to be afraid of anything happening in our lives, which is quite a big thing to say. Still, we wish for the good things.
You mentioned juiciness and aliveness. What is it that is most alive and passionate for you right now in your practice and in your teaching?
Yeah, funny, I was just doing breath work and I was having big surges of passion around my work. At the moment, I'm going through a compassionate calling I've had for a couple of years, like an aching in my heart to bring the Tantra work to the next level from where I'm at. And that level, the level that's calling me is a level of compassion and giving back. So a lot of people who come into the Tantra world are very fortunate, healthy people traveling the world doing, wonderful things. And I've been looking more and more at how can we reach people who are really in deep suffering with Tantra, and especially in the field of sexuality, because sexuality, our biggest shadow really in society is the sexual shadow, where we have rape and trauma and abuse. And Tantra actually has methods that could shine a light into the darkest places and bring a relief of the suffering, not only from victims, but also from those who are suffering from being rapists, which is also a form of suffering. And so I feel very called to extend the work out of the bubble. I love the bubble and I could stay in here forever, but I have a very deep calling to extend out of the bubble. I'm talking with all kinds of interesting people now, putting on some different projects of working with women who've been in sex trafficking and working with people who've been raped and abused, and trying to see what format we could create to bring the potent healing quality of Tantra out beyond the bubble and into areas of society that could really benefit from it. Another area that's similar and related is teenagers. That it kind of goes along the same, that so many people come to workshops in their 30s, 40s, 50s even, and it's like we never learned anything at school about intimacy. It's such a big part of our lives. It's probably the deepest longing we have, and we really don't know how to do it. Nobody teaches us. And nowadays with the internet, also teenagers are getting, God knows what influences around sexuality. So I also would passionately love to reach young people and bring Tantra out of its bubble, basically, to places where it could really help society. That's my passion. Not sure how it's all going to work right now, but I'm feeling it and I'm making connections, and I feel that it's happening.
From all that you've been doing, you've been teaching for many years, you've got a vast amount of experience, you've witnessed probably hundreds of people, if not thousands, I don't know, going through your trainings or trainings that you've co-created. Do you see repeating patterns where you sort of think, gosh, I wish people would just realize this, or aha, it's that thing again? What are the common things that we all do, that us people do, that it would be so great if we just knew, there's another way and it's this.
Yeah. Oh, so many. That's what the work is. I think maybe the biggest one for me is I wish we were taught how to take care of someone who's vulnerable in our presence. I think this is the essence of what Tantra has to teach us, and the cause of most of the harm that human beings do. And that's on every level, whether it's a parent with a child, or a big strong man with a weaker woman, or it can be any gender, any combination. But somehow this is a very precious honor when someone's vulnerable with us. Someone's blindfolded in our presence, or someone comes for a massage and closes their eyes and lies down. It's like such an honor that somebody made themselves vulnerable. And I think this is it, is we're somehow not taught to honor that, and also how to take care of someone that's vulnerable. So I think around power dynamics, this is really crucial. And if we had parents and caretakers who didn't take care of our vulnerability, then we never learned that important role. And then when we're in personal relationships, and when we're parents, and when we're teachers, and all of those, or bosses, anything, all the time power dynamics are there. Yeah. And I think Tantra teaches us exquisitely, or can teach us exquisitely, how to turn that one around. And just imagine a world where we all treated vulnerable people in our presence as a great honor, I think that single thing alone would change everything. So that's the biggest one. You know, there are so many, a lot of things around self-love I see, and hating our bodies and all of these things, but I think it could almost all umbrella under this one factor. If only we could really learn what it is to hold space for the vulnerable, then we could all surrender more, and we could all hold space more, and we could all surrender more to love, which is what we deeply want.
So Shashi, you've just published your first book. Congratulations. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, I'm very excited to be a writer for Hay House. It's a really amazing publishing house. And they have a series called the Basic Series, which are like introductory books on different topics. So they asked me to do the one on Tantra, which was both a challenge and a joy. A challenge to kind of, in 50,000 words, write a whole book on Tantra. And of course, a great responsibility as well to be the person to write that book. But such a great joy as well and I felt in many ways I was a good person to do that, because I've done different strands of Tantra, from the Neo-Tantra, which is a more modern, to the classical and the Taoist, and touching on the Tibetan. So I thought, well, I've seen quite a lot of the broad spectrum. So my book is a really good starting book for anyone who's wondering what is Tantra. Nice, safe way to get into it, because it's easier than going to a workshop to just have a look at the book and see. Yeah. But also, a lot of people who've been practicing Tantra for a long time are really appreciating the book, because you don't always get a lot of theory in the classroom. You get a lot of experiences, and a lot of people are saying they're really enjoying having the book kind of concreting everything that they already know, but putting it down into words and ideas. And so, yeah, that's it. It's called Tantra, Discover the Path from Sex to Spirit. And soon, very soon, we've got a CD coming with it as well, because Tantra is so experiential. Made a CD that has got some meditations to do alone and some meditations to do as a couple or with a friend if you want to practice.
Does that involve having sex?
It doesn't. It could be used before making love, but it's things like eye gazing and dropping in together and being able to see the divine quality in each other, things like this. And most of the meditations are just 10 minutes long. But of course, if a couple are making love, it could be wonderful to do a meditation beforehand and then go into their normal lovemaking. That alone is going to start shifting everything. So I don't guide the lovemaking. They have to do that bit themselves.
And you also mentioned some more creative projects that are about to happen for you. Is there anything there you would like to just mention?
Yeah, it's a very creative time. I mean, I guess Tantra is full of energy and creative energy. But I've also been working together. Niraj Naik, who I made the CD with, he works creating music. It's called binaural music. So it puts a special frequency when you listen with headphones that helps your brain to go into a more relaxed state. And this is often used in self-hypnosis. So we used that technology together with, you know, what I've done from Tantra, and we put this together to make some self-hypnosis tantric audios for people. And I'm very excited about this because it hasn't been done before. No. We've researched and we can't find anything like it. So, for example, there'll be one on trauma. So anyone who has a trauma around their sexual energy, this is a wonderful way to just lie back in bed and put on headphones and listen and begin to reprogram and be able to, again, trauma creates contraction in the body, and then it feels very unsafe. Every time there's sexual stimulation, it can feel very unsafe and keep re-triggering the trauma. So it's just one of many methods. Trauma is good to work with a therapist as well, but we thought we would make an audio that people can listen to every day that will also help their body to relax. And then we've got some audios on full body orgasm and other tantric practices so that people can use self-hypnosis along with their other practices to shift their body from contraction style sex and orgasms into tantric style sex and orgasms.
What is a full body orgasm and how can I have one?
So, you know, in a nutshell, because I could talk about it for hours, it's a great topic. It's about moving from contracting and expelling energy out of our body to expanding and letting it through. So often we learn, when we feel turned on, we learn to kind of contract against it. So we go like, and then we can't take very much, and we release it out. So it's like a balloon filling with water, and then it pops and all the water spills back into the earth. So that can be, you know, people enjoy that a lot. but what's happening energetically is you take energy in, sort of like earth energy, life force energy comes into your body, and then you lose it back out again. So when you move into Tantra, you let that energy in, and as you get turned on, instead of contracting, you expand, and then more comes, and expand, and then more comes, and you expand, and then it's like fountains come up through the body, and more energy can come. And actually then it can rise up through the body. So energetically, working with the chakra system, for example, it can pierce up through each chakra, opening different areas of our body and our energy system. So your heart can crack open, or your third eye can open, your crown, you can feel connected to the universe. So full body orgasm is about letting the energy rise instead of contracting and pushing it out. So expanding and making space. So we're expanding and making space for more life force energy to come into us, so we feel more alive and more connected to existence. And to share that with someone else is just amazing. It's infectious, so if one person is orgasming like that, the other one probably will experience it too. And it's so profound. You know, lovers are in prayer together. You don't have to try and pray, you just are, because there's energy cracking everything open, and it's like God pouring out of every cell, and you're just seeing the truth of existence beyond our small contracted problems. Boom, they're all gone, and we're there seeing love everywhere. So it creates a state of prayer, reverence, connection, a spiritual state just sort of happens with full body orgasm.
So it sounds very much like your celibacy and your search for truth have come completely together in what you're doing and being now. You know, there's no separation anymore.
Yeah, it's true. And even discovering, when you bring the word celibacy, the celibacy before Tantra was one of just not moving any sexual energy at all. And of course, being in the path of Tantra, there are periods where I'm not having sex. So I'm being celibate, but it's a very different celibacy, because every breath is making love with life. Like, sexual energy still keeps moving. So even if you're on your own without a partner, it's like you're making love to life. So you'll never stop being a lover if you're practicing Tantra. You may not have a lover, but you'll never stop being a lover.
That's a great catchword. I love that. Yeah. So if people would like to know more about you and what you do to connect with you and your work, how do they find you?
Well, I have a webpage, shashisolluna.com, and also sollunatantra.com, Solluna with a double L. But they can Google me, Shashi Solluna. There aren't too many of us around, it seems. So they can look up and have a little look through. I do different things, from teacher trainings, I do darkness retreats, I do pilgrimages to India. I like to do interesting and unusual things now in my teaching, and I like to do deeper work. So I don't tend to do so many small workshops weekends anymore. I tend to do teacher trainings, or going into pitch darkness for 10 days, or into amazing temples. So I like to really do special work. I'm also very into teaching tantric massage trainings, and so they can find me, and I somehow feel that the right people always end up at the right training. It just works.
So this interview itself has been full of rich and juicy information. Your book, your CD, all of these are going to be such amazing resources. But if you just had one message you could put across now to our audience, what would it be?
Have faith and love. I think that's it, really. Have faith in love, even when the clouds are passing in front of the sun. Just remember that the sun is always there, and that's what love is like. And there are moments when we can't feel it and it's not tangible, but if we can always have faith in it, then we'll return to it more quickly, and we can be that space holder, that faith keeper for others, so that in their darkest moments, we're there believing in the love. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Shashi. Just been amazing to spend time with you, to listen to a little bit of your story and just hear your wisdom. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for watching, and join me again next time on Heart to Heart with me, Shakti Sundari.